Good morning, everybody. My name is Carl Wilson. I'm the Bureau Director for the Bureau of Marine Science and the Department of Marine Resources. I'm co-chair of our Coastal Marine Working Group with Kurt Brown with Ready Seafood, lobsterman scientist, and also seen on QVC as well. It was an absolute honor to work with our working group over the last 6 to 8 months. We have over 40 members coming from a diverse background and experiences. And, we very quickly moved from individual. Thank you. We very quickly moved from individual agendas and experiences to where our group was thinking. And I just really want to thank the working group for kind of working towards a common goal. And I think in the end, we had 3 very clear themes that were brought forward, and I would like to think that they were supported by the vast majority of our working group. I do want to call out a special thank you to Jess Waller with the Department of Marine Resources. She really provided the backbone of the staff for our working group, and Laura Singer, who provided facilitation services. Without either of them, we would not have been here today. Also want to call out Edge Venuti, who was our youth representative. Edge attended almost every single meeting that we held. And I know that as someone who used to be her age a long time ago, to be sitting at the table with 40 professionals in the field is very intimidating, but it's also very impactful. And I know when I had similar experiences, it's those experiences carry through throughout your career. And so I know Edge is here today. So thank you for working with us. Also want to call out Gabe McPhail and Marissa McMahon for representing our group within the equity committee. And equity is an issue that we actually talk quite a bit about within our working group, and it's an issue that will continue into the future. So to tee up our conversations, we have really moved forward with 3 large themes, and shortly after the January storms, we had a kind of an impromptu call with Kurt and a few other people, and we said, well, I think we know what our first bullet point will be, and that is talking about infrastructure in our coastal communities. Quite literally, as we were on the phone, parts of our infrastructure were floating out to sea. And so we do want to advance, one large kind of bold prediction or bold call to say we need to invest in our coastal infrastructure significantly in order to harden the coast of Maine against climate change and rising sea level. Both Kurt and I, with our experiences over our careers, I think we talk a little bit more about supporting climate adaptation around fisheries and monitoring. These are both subjects that are kind of near and dear to both of our hearts. But with that, I will let Kurt take over.
Thank you, Carl. You got it? All right. Clock is ticking. Show of hands. Who knows what QVC is? One of those. Do a lot of education outreach, and none of the kids we talk to have any idea. But yeah, I mean, when we think about the work over the last 7-8 months, it's really incredible what we've seen as a state and the impacts, the storms of January, both 10th and 13th. And I think we all have very vivid memories from those 2 days about what we saw. Myself personally, it was the first time I have ever seen water come up over Deeks Wharf, where I keep my boat, and then the flood of images, no pun intended, but the flood of images coming from around the coast of docks literally getting washed away, and anything that survived the 10th getting culled out on the 13th. And so our big priority really came out of those 2 storms and building healthy and, we already clicked it, excellent, healthy and resilient coastal communities and protect critical place-based infrastructure. You can see all the different aspects of that on the slides there. I won't go into too many details because we are We're at 5 minutes right now, but in addition to what's on the slide, and this was our big priority for sure, the storms really changed our working group priorities. Like I said, watching water overtop just about everything along the state was an eye-opener for all of us. And out of that came our big ask, our big recommendation. We were told to think big, and I think $100 million over 5 years investment in infrastructure to make our coastline more resilient is a real key priority for our group. And in addition to that, supporting municipalities and inventorying what currently exists, identifying priority resources, and comprehensive planning are all key as well. And so that was our big one coming out of our group. And again, it was a really humbling experience being part of such an amazing working group with so many great minds. And we covered a lot of ground over 8 months. And I'll turn it back over to Carl for our second priority. Big green.
Yeah. And I would say, with the suggestion of a major investment in our coastal infrastructure, this is our attempt to fight back around climate change. If our coastal communities and our fisheries are going to continue, we need to be able to support them with the docks and the bait supply houses and the infrastructure to ship their product around the coast. And without this investment, we lack that ability to fight back. And I think we saw that in January, and it clearly is a call. So when it comes to fisheries, what we're talking about is being nimble and adaptive as we move forward. New species are coming onto the radar screen, and other species are dropping off the radar screen. An example would be black sea bass, where we have occasional reports of black sea bass, which is a healthy, profitable fisheries in other parts of the Atlantic coast, that we have occasional reports. We have no markets for them. We have a very small quota, and we have no monitoring programs to actually monitor the species that might be coming into coastal waters. And so it's just an example of we need to be nimble. We need to be able to move forward in a way that allows us to work within some of the structures that we already have. Another issue that came through with fisheries conversation is around equity and access. The changes that I think everyone in Maine have felt during the pandemic as far as just the housing squeeze that we now see, that has direct implications for participants within our coastal fisheries. Meredith White from the Department of Marine Resources, I thought, brought an excellent example when we have an important heritage fishery like the clam industry and harvesters that obtain licenses through municipalities are struggling to live in the municipalities, what they would train. And so it's just this slow pushing away from the traditional nature of some of our fisheries. I'll pass this off to you, Kurt. Thank you.
Before we move on to the next one, you can see marine bioproduct innovation there, and I think that's a key component into really a healthy future for a lot of Maine's marine industries. When we had a fun field trip, like Hannah mentioned, to our facility in Saco where we process lobster. And when you process lobster, you may buy a pound of lobster, but only sell half that maybe. The rest could be considered a waste stream. And there are so many opportunities in Maine's marine industries to turn those waste streams into revenue streams. And that's where collaboration really comes in. We're working with fun projects with the University of Maine on incorporating shells into soil for potato plants and increasing their disease resistance. We're working on a really fun project with some folks down at the University of Maryland, converting lobster shells and utilizing them for zinc-ion batteries for large-scale grid storage. So that type of expertise, which is here in this room, helps everybody move forward and build a more resilient marine economy. And speaking of collaborative research, I think both Carl and I have a research bias, and initially our priority was probably monitoring when it comes to the Gulf of Maine. Obviously, we're seeing fundamental changes, but without documenting those changes, we...
Forward you one slide.
That's the big green one. Thank you. Without that monitoring, we can't make informed decisions. So I think we landed on how important that is going forward. And that ultimately will be a collaboration between industry and science. And the state has such a strong foundation of that collaborative nature. The department does an amazing job of collaborating across many different spheres. And so that data collection is going to be a key component of all that. And I'll let Carl speak to the department's vision on that. But from a lobster perspective, one of the really great things that came out of the whale issue was funding for basic research throughout the Gulf of Maine, not just on whales, but on the entire ecosystem. So out of that issue, we were able to improve our understanding, and we currently are doing that with science that the department is doing on all aspects of the entire ecosystem. So.
Okay, Kurt, this is actually your quote to go from. So
if you wanted to touch out, we're at 0. So this is a good one. So this is a quote from somebody out of Spruce Head. We've always had storms, but storms are more out of the south and southeast now. And out of that direction, a lot of our harbor is unprotected. May not seem like a big difference between a nor'easter and a sou'easter, but that 90-degree difference in wind direction piles water up in areas, especially during the winter, that we are not used to. I mean, Winter Harbor is named Winter Harbor because it is in the lee out of the nor'east. Out of the sou'east, it puts a whole slew of infrastructure at risk, and that's exactly what we saw in December, in January multiple times, and even in April. You forget about all the storms we've had over the course of the last year, but those southeast storms during the winter, especially when we're talking about precipitation in the form of rain and not snow, does an unmeasurable amount of damage, and that's something we're going to have to continue to prepare for into the future.
Okay, and I think that emphasizes our final point here is when we reflect back on priority populations, having reflected back to us a little bit. One thing that I would say is that our group, and if you've ever worked with Kathleen Billings, you know that she kind of tells you the way it is. And Kathleen really brought forward to our group the municipal experience where, Kathleen and the town of Stonington have been engaged with climate conversations for quite some time, but not all communities have been, and there's a real need to support those communities. And so I just really appreciate the grounding that Kathleen brought to our group. So to kind of wrap this up, I also just want to thank Kurt as a co-chair. If you know Kurt, you know that he is on the move all the time. And for Kurt to bring his leadership and work to this working group really added to the robustness, and it added a kinetic energy of actually bringing our working group to place of business, bringing fishermen to our table and describing their experiences. And so just want to thank you, Kurt. So appreciate it. I think we're done.